isn't my mother. Chapter 1. The Return. I never wanted to come back to New Mexico. It had been 12 years since I left, packing everything I owned into the back of a rusted pickup and swearing that I would never again sleep under the same stars that had terrified me as a child. The desert was supposed to feel vast and empty, but to me it always seemed too alive, too watchful. Out in the canyons where the red stone teeth bit up into the sky, I used to lie awake and swear I could hear something breathing just outside my window. My mother would tell me it was the coyotes, but even as a boy I could tell the difference between the chatter of a coyote and something that lingered too long at the edge of silence. But then the phone rang 2 months ago. It was my cousin, Eric, his voice low, heavy, the way people speak at funerals. He told me Aunt Lena had passed and that someone needed to come deal with the house. The ranch had been sitting on the edge of town for generations, built out near the dry wash where the piñons grow twisted and hunched like old men. No one lived out there anymore, not since my uncle drank himself into an early grave and Lena became more reclusive with each passing year. She'd die before she left that land, she'd said. And she did. I told Eric I didn't have time. I told him my life was in Denver now, that I couldn't just pack up and drive down. But Eric knew me well enough to twist the knife. "She left the house to you," he said flatly. "And the land. It's yours, whether you want it or not." That shut me up. So, a week later, I was heading south, my headlights cutting through endless desert highway, the sky overhead thick with stars that seemed brighter and colder than I remembered. The ranch was worse than I expected. The screen door hung open, one hinge groaning in the wind. Dust coated the windows so thick you could barely see inside. The barn leaned like it was drunk, and the corral fence had collapsed in places, barbed wire snarled into rusted heaps. But the worst part wasn't the decay. It was the silence. Back when I was young, you could always hear something at night. The shrill yips of coyotes, the wind pushing through the junipers, the occasional hoot of an owl. But that first night, when I stood on the porch with a beer in my hand, I realized there was nothing. Not a single sound. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. That silence followed me into the house. Inside smelled like cedar and mothballs. Dust lay thick across the old furniture, and the floor creaked in protest with every step. I tried the lights, but half the bulbs were burnt out. I told myself I'd just sleep in the guest room, crash for the night, and figure things out in the morning. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow and lazy, I thought I heard something outside. At first, I told myself it was the house settling, then maybe the wind against the barn. But then came the sound of footsteps on gravel, slow, dragging, deliberate. I held my breath. They stopped just outside the window. I didn't look. I couldn't. Instead, I lay there, every muscle in my body tight as wire, waiting. Then, after what felt like an eternity, I heard it. Daniel. My name, spoken in a voice I hadn't heard in over a decade. It was my mother's voice. But my mother was buried in the cemetery off Route 46, her grave marked by a plain white stone. I squeezed my eyes shut and pulled the blanket over my head like a child, heart hammering so loud I was sure whatever was outside could hear it. I don't know how long I stayed like that, but eventually the footsteps retreated. When I finally fell asleep, the sun was already starting to creep through the dusty curtains. The next morning, I tried to laugh it off. Grief, I told myself. Coming back here, to the land where I grew up, where my mother raised me. Maybe my brain was just conjuring old memories, playing tricks on me. That made sense. That was rational. But when I stepped outside, I noticed something in the dirt just below my bedroom window. Tracks. At first I thought they were coyote prints, but the longer I stared, the more wrong they seemed. The toes were too long, the heel too narrow. And the stride, it wasn't right. The prints were almost human, but not quite. I stood there, sweat gathering on my neck despite the morning chill. Then I brushed sand over them with my boot, burying them like a secret. That was when I saw him, an old man leaning against a pickup at the edge of the property. He had long gray braids and skin weathered like leather left in the sun. His eyes were sharp, though, cutting straight through me. "You shouldn't be here," he called out. I walked over, wary but curious. "Do I know you?" "You don't," he said. "But I knew your mother. She warned you about this land, didn't she?" I hesitated. My mother had warned me plenty of times, though never directly. She used to tell stories late at night, in that hushed voice parents use when they want their children to listen. Stories about witches who walked in the skins of animals, about things that could steal your face, your voice, your soul. Skinwalkers, she called them. Yi Naldlushi. I never knew if she told those stories to scare me or protect me. The old man spat in the dirt. "This place isn't safe. Not for you. Not for anyone." I swallowed hard. "What are you saying?" He looked past me, toward the house, his jaw tightening. "They know you're here now. You need to leave." Before I could ask anything else, he climbed into his truck and drove off, leaving a trail of dust that hung in the air long after he was gone. That night, I sat on the porch with every light in the house blazing behind me. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that there was no such thing as skinwalkers, that I was too old to be spooked by desert ghost stories. But when the sun slipped below the canyon rim and the shadows stretched long across the sand, I felt it again, that sense of being watched. And when I finally went inside, locking every door and window, I swore I heard laughter somewhere out in the dark. Not coyote laughter, not human. Something in between. Something wrong. Chapter 2. Echoes in the Dark. I told myself I'd leave. After that first night, I promised I'd pack the truck and head back north. Sell the ranch for whatever it was worth, sign the papers, and forget this stretch of desert ever existed. But something kept me there. Part of it was stubbornness. I didn't like the idea of running scared, especially not from voices in the night. Part of it was guilt. My mother had lived and died out here, and she'd carried stories like heirlooms, secrets that I'd shrugged off as superstition. And maybe deep down, there was a part of me that wanted answers, about her, about the land, about why I'd spent my whole life feeling like shadows clung to me more tightly here than anywhere else. So I stayed. I spent the next few days trying to bring the house back to life. I replaced bulbs, swept the floors, cleared out the kitchen cabinets of stale crackers and rusted cans. It felt almost normal, like I was just settling into an inherited property the way anyone else might. Almost. But every night, as soon as the last light of sunset bled from the canyon walls, the quiet would return. A thick, smothering silence that pressed against my ears until I thought they might pop. I'd sit in the kitchen with a lamp burning, listening, waiting. Sometimes I thought I heard movement in the yard, but when I checked, there'd be nothing. Just the bent skeleton of the barn and the wind scuffing dust across the ground. On the fourth night, I heard the knocking. It came soft at first, as if someone rapped a knuckle gently against the siding. Then louder, 3 steady thuds that echoed through the empty rooms. I froze in the hallway, heart climbing into my throat. The knocking came again, this time from the back door. I forced myself to walk, every step heavy, until I reached the kitchen. Through the glass pane of the door, I could see the porch awash in moonlight. Empty. My hand hovered over the knob. Then I heard it. "Danny, let me in." My knees nearly buckled. It was her again, my mother's voice, soft, patient, the same way she used to sound when I locked myself in my room as a child. I gripped the counter with white knuckles. "You're dead," I whispered. My voice cracked. "You're not her." The voice didn't falter. "Please, son, it's cold out here." I don't know how long I stood there, trembling, staring at the empty porch. Eventually, I stumbled back into the living room, locked every bolt I could find, and sat with a shotgun across my lap until dawn. When the sun came up, I checked the back steps. There were footprints again. And this time, I couldn't tell myself they were animal. They were barefoot, human. But the toes were too long. Later that day, I drove into town. I hadn't been back to Piedra Vista in over a decade, but nothing much had changed. Same cracked sidewalks, same faded storefronts, same diner with the flickering neon sign. The only thing different was me, older, wearier, carrying the weight of nights I couldn't explain. I stopped in at the diner, ordered black coffee, and tried to quiet the pounding in my skull. That was when I saw her. Maria. She was sitting 2 booths over, flipping through a notebook. When she looked up and saw me, her eyes widened. "Danny." It had been years since anyone called me that. I blinked. Maria. Holy hell. We'd gone to school together, though back then she was more friend of a friend than anything else. I remembered her as quiet, sharp-eyed, the kind of girl who saw things no one else did. She slid into my booth without asking, and for the first time in days, I felt something like relief. "I heard you were back," she said. "Your aunt's place, right?" "Yeah," I said, rubbing the back of my neck. "House is falling apart. I'm just trying to get it in order." She studied me for a long moment. "You've seen it, haven't you?" My stomach tightened. "Seen what?" Her voice dropped. "Out by the canyon. At night." I looked away, staring at the warped reflection in my coffee. "I don't know what I've seen." She leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Don't mess with it, Danny. Don't talk to it. Don't let it inside. That's how it gets you." I forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow even to me. "So you believe in all that stuff? Skinwalkers and witches?" Her expression didn't change. "Believe in it? I've heard it. I've smelled it. Once, I swear I saw it." She shivered, arms tightening around herself. "It wears faces like masks, sometimes even voices." I didn't tell her about the knocking. I didn't tell her about my mother's voice. But I think she saw it in my eyes anyway. "Be careful," she said, sliding out of the booth. "It doesn't just want to scare you. It wants you." Then she was gone, leaving me alone with my coffee and the hollow echo of her warning. That night, I tried to follow her advice. I kept the shotgun close, but I told myself I wouldn't listen. No matter what I heard outside, I wouldn't move. I wouldn't answer. But just past midnight, something scraped against the siding. At first it was faint, like claws dragging across wood. Then louder, closer. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to stay still. "Danny." The voice floated in through the walls. But this time, it wasn't my mother. It was me. My own voice, calling from just beyond the porch. My blood turned to ice. "Danny, let me in," it begged. "I'm cold." The words were identical to what my mother's voice had said. Identical. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. Instead, I shoved the barrel of the shotgun against the window frame, finger trembling against the trigger. Then came the laughter, low, broken, a twisted imitation of something human. And the footsteps, heavy, dragging, circling the house like a predator toying with prey. I didn't sleep that night, not even after the sounds faded. When dawn came, I found more footprints in the dirt, some barefoot, some coyote, and some that shifted halfway between the two. Chapter 3. The Canyon. I couldn't keep pretending anymore. The footprints were real, the voices were real, and whatever was circling the house at night wanted more than just to frighten me. By the fifth morning, I was running on fumes. My eyes ached from lack of sleep, and every noise made me twitch. Even the wind through the junipers sounded like whispers. I tried to distract myself with chores, fixing a broken section of fence, clearing out Lena's old pantry. But no matter what I did, my thoughts kept circling back to the canyon. The canyon had always loomed in my childhood like a dark mouth at the edge of the world. My mother warned me never to go there alone. "That's where they walk," she used to whisper, clutching my shoulder as if the words themselves might pull me toward the cliffs. "That's where they change." Of course, I went once anyway. I must have been 10, maybe 11, sneaking away with a flashlight and a pack of gum. I didn't make it far, just far enough to hear something in the rocks, a growl that wasn't quite animal, wasn't quite human. I dropped the flashlight and ran home so fast I couldn't breathe. My mother never asked why my knees were scraped and my shirt torn. She just looked at me with those tired eyes that said, "Now you know." Now, years later, I found myself standing on the porch, staring at that jagged cut in the horizon. The canyon was waiting. I set out just after noon, when the sun burned hottest. My boots crunched over brittle grass, the air dry enough to crack my lips. I carried a backpack with a flashlight, some jerky, and a canteen. Part of me felt ridiculous, like a kid spooking himself with ghost stories. But the other part, the part that had heard its own voice whispering in the night, knew I wasn't just chasing shadows. The canyon was a good 3 miles from the house. The land sloped gently down into a wash, then rose again into the cliffs. The red stone blazed under the sun, streaked with black desert varnish. Ravens circled overhead, their cries harsh against the silence. When I reached the rim, I hesitated. The drop was sheer, jagged rock plunging into shadow. The air smelled faintly metallic, like rust or blood. A narrow trail wound along the edge, leading down into the depths. I should have turned back. Instead, I started down. The path twisted between boulders and thorn brush, my steps echoing in the stillness. The deeper I went, the cooler the air became, shadows swallowing the sun. The silence grew heavier, pressing on my ears until they rang. Halfway down, I found bones. At first, I thought they were from a deer, scattered by scavengers. But when I crouched to look closer, I saw the skull was wrong. Too flat, the teeth too human. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. That was when I heard it. A whistle, high and shrill, bouncing off the canyon walls. I froze, my pulse thundering. It came again, closer this time. A tune I recognized but couldn't place. Then I remembered. My mother used to whistle it when she worked in the kitchen, a lullaby her grandmother had taught her. I dropped the bones and ran. I didn't stop until I was back at the top, gasping for air. Sweat stung my eyes, and the sun above looked colder than it should have. That night I called Maria. She answered on the second ring, her voice wary. "You went there, didn't you?" I swallowed hard. "How did you—" "You look like your mother," she said. "She went too, years ago. Said something followed her back. After that, she stopped coming into town." I gripped the phone until my knuckles ached. "What the hell is it, Maria? What does it want?" Her silence stretched long enough that I thought she might hang up. Finally, she whispered, "It wants you. Once it's called your name, it doesn't stop. It'll wear you down until you let it in. And when you do—" She trailed off, but I didn't need her to finish. After I hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen, shotgun across my lap, waiting. The knocking came at 2:13 a.m. This time it was at the front door, hard, angry. "Danny," a voice crooned. Not my mother. Not me. Someone else. Male. I crept down the hallway, gun raised, sweat dripping down my back. "Danny," it said again, sing-song. "Open up." I reached the door, my finger tight on the trigger. Through the window, I saw movement. At first, I thought it was Eric, my cousin. Same height, same square shoulders. But when the figure leaned close to the glass, grinning, I saw the eyes. Too wide, too dark, and the mouth, too many teeth. I stumbled back, nearly firing. The thing pressed its face against the glass, grinning wider, skin stretching unnaturally. "Danny," it whispered in my cousin's voice. "I'm thirsty. Let me in." My body shook so hard the shotgun rattled in my hands. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then, suddenly, it was gone. No footsteps, no retreat, just gone, like smoke. When I dared to look again, the porch was empty. But on the glass where it had pressed its face, there was a smear of blood. I didn't sleep at all after that. At dawn, I packed the truck, but as I loaded the last bag, I heard laughter. From the canyon, low, echoing, patient, like it knew I wasn't going anywhere. Chapter 4. The Things She Left Behind. I didn't leave. I told myself I would. I had my bags in the truck, the keys in my hand, the road stretching north like an artery back to safety. But something stopped me. It wasn't bravery. It wasn't even stubbornness this time. It was a box. While I was grabbing the last of my things from the bedroom, I noticed a loose panel in the closet floor. When I pried it up, I found a wooden box tucked inside. My mother's handwriting was scrawled across the lid. "For Daniel. Not until I'm gone." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were letters, photographs, and something wrapped in cloth. The letters were addressed to me, though most had never been mailed. In them, my mother wrote about the thing in the canyon. She said it had followed her home one night after she was foolish enough to walk too far past the rim. She described the knocking, the voices, the dreams. I thought I was strong enough to resist it. One letter read, the ink smudged with what might have been tears. But every night it wears me down a little more. It wants me to open the door. It wants me to belong to it. If it can't have me, it will wait. It will wait for you. My throat closed as I read. The photographs were worse. Most were old Polaroids of the ranch, sunsets, horses, my mother smiling by the corral. But in the background of some, at the far edge of the frame, there were shapes. Blurred figures standing at the tree line, too tall, too thin. In one, I swear the figure was wearing my mother's face. Finally, I unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a small pouch filled with herbs and a bundle of white ash tied with red thread. Tucked alongside was a note in her handwriting. "If it comes for you, keep this close. Don't let it take your name. Don't let it touch you." I sat on the floor of that dusty bedroom for a long time, staring at the pouch in my palm, the words echoing in my head. I never started the truck. That evening, I drove into town and found Maria. She was outside the diner, smoking a cigarette, her hair pulled back in a messy braid. When she saw me, her mouth tightened. "You look like hell," she said. "Thanks," I muttered. "I found something. At the house." I told her about the letters, the photos, the pouch. I didn't show them to her. I didn't trust myself to bring them out into the open. But I described enough. She listened without interrupting, tapping ash into the dirt. When I finished, she blew out a long breath. "Your mother wasn't crazy," she said. "That box, she was trying to protect you. They say only certain people draw its attention, bloodlines, families. Maybe it chose her. Maybe now it's choosing you." I wanted to tell her that was insane, that it was just folklore, that none of this could be real. but the memory of my own voice calling to me from the porch froze the words in my throat. "What do I do?" I whispered. She studied me for a long time, then nodded toward the hills. "There's an elder, lives about 20 miles out. Some say he knows the old ways. He won't talk to outsiders, but maybe he'll talk to you. If you're your mother's son, will he stop it?" Her eyes softened, though her voice didn't. "He might help you survive it. That's the best anyone can hope for." I didn't make it to the elder. That night, the skinwalker came closer than ever. It started with the scratching at the windows. Soft at first, like fingernails on glass, then harder, insistent. I walked the dark halls of the house with the pouch clutched tight in my hand, the shotgun in the other. The photographs from my mother's box haunted me, every shadow in the corners twisting into those blurred figures. Then the scratching stopped. Silence. I almost thought I'd imagined it, until the doorknob rattled. Slowly, deliberately, my blood froze. Then, from the other side of the door, "Danny, please, it hurts." It was my own voice again, broken, pleading. I stumbled back, shaking my head. "No, you're not me." The voice grew louder, frantic. "Danny, open the door. I'm hurt. I'm bleeding. Please, you have to let me in." Tears stung my eyes as I pressed my back to the wall. Then came the bang. Something slammed against the door so hard the wood cracked. I raised the shotgun, heart hammering, certain it would burst through any second. But instead of breaking, the thing laughed. Not a human laugh, not an animal laugh. Something in between. Something wrong. It scraped along the walls, circling the house, its laughter rising and falling, mocking, endless. I stuffed my mother's pouch into my shirt, clutching it like a lifeline, whispering her words to myself. "Don't let it take your name. Don't let it touch you." At some point, exhaustion pulled me under, though I don't remember falling asleep. When I woke, the door was cracked, but unbroken. The wood splintered, the knob bent, and smeared across the porch in dark, sticky streaks was blood. But not red, black. By morning, I knew I couldn't keep hiding in the house. If I stayed, it would wear me down just like it did my mother. The knocking, the voices, the laughter, they weren't going to stop. And when my will finally broke, when I opened that door, I knew it wouldn't just be me it claimed. It would be my face, my voice, my skin walking in the world. So I packed the box, the pouch, and the shotgun. And as the sun rose over the canyon, I swore I'd find the elder Maria spoke of. Because if I didn't, I wasn't sure there'd be anything left of me by the next new moon. Chapter 5. The Elder. The road to Shiprock was long and barren, the kind of road where the horizon wavered like water in the heat. I drove with the box on the passenger seat, the pouch hanging from the rearview mirror like a charm. The shotgun lay across the bench seat, just in case. Maria had given me directions scrawled on a napkin. "Take the service road past the mesa. When the pavement ends, keep going. You'll know his place when you see the juniper split in two." It sounded simple enough, but with every mile my stomach tightened. The land out there wasn't empty. It just pretended to be. By noon, the sun was beating through the windshield, turning the cab into an oven. I cracked the window, letting the hot wind whip against my face. Out in the distance, the desert shimmered and shifted. For a moment, I thought I saw someone walking along the ridge, a tall figure, thin as a shadow. When I blinked, it was gone. I told myself it was the heat. But when I stopped to piss an hour later, I noticed prints in the dirt along the shoulder. Barefoot, toes too long, the same tracks I'd seen by the house, and they were fresh. I drove faster after that, every nerve stretched taut. The land rolled by, arroyos carved deep into the earth, scrub brush rattling in the wind, cliffs that rose like broken teeth. The world felt too big and too empty, like I was the only living thing for miles. Then I heard it. A whistle. Faint at first, drifting through the open window. The same lullaby my mother used to hum. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. The whistle grew louder, closer. I glanced at the rearview mirror. For a split second, I saw myself in the back seat. Not the reflection in the mirror, the back seat. My own face staring at me from the shadows, lips curled into a grin. I swerved hard, the truck fishtailing in the dirt. By the time I looked again, the seat was empty. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might break my ribs. I wanted to turn back, to abandon everything, but I forced the truck forward. If I didn't find the elder, I wasn't going to last another night. The directions proved true. Past the mesa, the pavement ended, giving way to a washboard dirt road. Dust trailed behind me in a choking cloud. After a mile, I saw it. A juniper tree split down the middle, branches twisting in opposite directions like broken arms. Beyond it sat a small house made of adobe, roof sagging, windows dark. A corral stood nearby, empty save for a rusted water trough. I parked and climbed out, clutching the pouch in my hand. An old man stepped onto the porch before I could knock. He was tall but stooped, his hair white and braided, his eyes sharp as obsidian. He looked at me as though he'd been expecting me. "You're Lena's boy," he said. I swallowed. "Daniel." He nodded once, slow. "She said you would come. One day." I froze. "She talked to you?" "Years ago." His voice was deep, dry as the desert. "Before it wore her down." My chest tightened. "She tried to fight it." He looked past me, toward the horizon. "Everyone tries." Inside, the air smelled of sage and wood smoke. The walls were lined with shelves of jars, herbs, powders, feathers, bones. A fire burned low in the hearth despite the heat outside. I sat on a worn rug while the elder studied me. His name, he finally told me, was Hostine Bigay. "You carry its scent already," he said, his gaze unwavering. "It has marked you. That is why you hear it, why you see it." I clenched my fists. "Then tell me how to stop it." His silence stretched until I thought he might refuse. Then he shook his head. "You cannot kill what has already given itself to darkness. Once they choose that path, they are no longer human. Not in the way you understand. You can only protect yourself. Endure." My throat went dry. "Endure." He tossed dried sage into the fire, the smoke curling thick and bitter. "Do not speak to it. Do not answer its knock. Do not let it touch you. Its power is in the invitation. Once you open the door, it wears you. Forever." "I know that already," I snapped. My nerves were fraying, raw. "It's at my house every night. Knocking, laughing, calling my name. It won't stop." The elder's eyes hardened. "It won't. Not until you are gone, or it has you." A chill swept through me. "So what am I supposed to do? Run forever?" He studied me for a long moment, then reached for a pouch from the shelf. He placed it in my hands, his fingers cold and strong. Inside was white ash, darker herbs, something sharp that pricked my palm. "Carry this. Burn it when it comes too close. It will not destroy it, but it will wound it, and maybe that will give you time." I nodded, clutching it to my chest. But even as I did, I felt it. Eyes on me, watching from outside. The elder must have felt it too, because his gaze shifted toward the window. "Go now," he said, voice low. "It followed you here." I ran for the truck. The sun was dipping toward the horizon, shadows stretching long. The wind howled through the scrub, carrying with it something else. Laughter, high and broken, riding the gusts. I slammed the door and started the engine, heart hammering as the headlights cut across the desert. At the edge of the light, just beyond the reach of the beams, I saw it. A figure crouched on all fours, its limbs too long, its head cocked at an unnatural angle. Its skin gleamed pale in the dark, stretched tight over bones. And as the truck roared forward, it rose. Slowly, deliberately, wearing my face. Chapter 6. The Breach. I drove back to the ranch with my pulse still rattling in my ears. All the way down the dirt road, I half expected the thing to sprint alongside the truck on all fours, grinning through the window. I kept my foot heavy on the gas until the house came into view, its silhouette hunkered against the desert like a forgotten grave marker. The elder's pouch sat on the seat beside me. I hadn't let go of it since he pressed it into my hands. I wanted to believe it was more than dust and herbs, that it was a shield, however thin. But when I stepped onto the porch, the smear of black blood from the night before was gone. Scrubbed clean, as if it had never been there. That scared me more than the stain itself. Maria came that evening. I hadn't asked her to, but when her battered Honda crunched up the driveway, I felt a wave of relief I couldn't explain. She stepped out with a pack slung over her shoulder, eyes sharp despite the exhaustion in her face. "You're not safe here," she said without preamble. "No kidding. I mean it." She looked past me at the house, her jaw tightening. "It's getting stronger. I can feel it. It won't just stay outside forever." I led her into the kitchen, where I spread out the letters, photos, and both pouches on the table. The firelight threw long shadows across the walls, making the blurred figures in the Polaroids seem like they were still moving. Maria's hands trembled as she looked at them. "Your mother fought it longer than most would, but it always comes back." I clenched my fists. "Then help me stop it." She hesitated, then sat across from me. "Stopping it isn't the right word. Surviving it, that's the best you can hope for." "That's exactly what the elder said." Her eyes flicked to mine. "You found him." I nodded. "He gave me another pouch, said it could wound it, maybe buy time." Maria exhaled through her nose, thinking, "If that's true, then we use it. We make it bleed." Her voice was steady, but I saw the flicker of fear behind her words. That night I didn't sleep. Neither did Maria. We sat in the living room with the shotgun across my lap, her knife flashing faintly in the lamplight. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the barn until it sounded like bones clattering together. At 1:47 a.m., the knocking began. Software gentle, like fingertips brushing the window glass. Maria's head snapped up, her hand tightening on the knife. "Don't move," she whispered. The knocking grew louder. First at the windows, then the door, then the walls themselves. A rhythm, deliberate, patient. Then came the voice. "Maria." Her entire body went rigid. It was her father's voice. Low, tired, the way she described him once years ago, when we were still kids, before he disappeared. Her eyes glossed with tears, her lips trembling. "Don't listen," I hissed. But the voice pressed on, soft, pleading. "Mija, please, let me in. I've missed you." She bit down on her knuckle, shaking, fighting not to move. The voice turned sharp, angry. "Maria, open the door, now!" She gasped, flinching like she'd been struck. I reached for her wrist, grounding her. "It isn't him. Don't let it inside." The laughter came then, scraping against the walls like claws. Mocking, cruel. Then something slammed against the back door so hard the frame shuddered. We both leapt to our feet, weapons raised. The pounding came again. Harder. Splinters cracked, hinges groaned. "It's going to break through," Maria whispered. I yanked the elder's pouch from my pocket, fumbling for matches. "If it comes in, we burn it." The third slam shook the whole house. Plaster rained from the ceiling. I struck the match. The flame flared, fragile but alive. The door exploded inward. Something stepped through. It was tall, too tall. Its limbs stretched unnaturally long. Its face shifted in the firelight, flickering between my mother, myself, Maria's father. Skin rippling, mouths forming and unforming. The stench hit us like rot and copper. I hurled the burning pouch forward. The herbs and ash ignited mid-air, exploding in a burst of acrid smoke. The thing shrieked, a sound that made my bones ache. Its skin blistered where the smoke touched, sloughing off in wet strips. It staggered back, clawing at its face, howling. Maria grabbed my arm. "Go!" We bolted through the front door, sprinting into the desert night. Behind us, the house shook with its fury, the walls rattling as if something huge was thrashing inside. We didn't stop until we reached the truck. Even then, I could still hear its laughter, echoing across the desert. Wounded, but not gone. We sat in the cab, gasping for breath, sweat cold on our skin. Maria's hands shook violently as she lit another cigarette, the flame stuttering. "It's stronger than I thought." "It bled," I said, voice hoarse. "It screamed. That means it can be hurt." She looked at me, eyes wide with fear and anger. "You don't understand. We didn't scare it off. We pissed it off. Now it knows we're fighting." Her words sat heavy between us. I looked back toward the house, its silhouette sagging against the night. For the first time since I came home, I wondered if there'd be anything left of it by morning. Chapter 7. The Hunt. We didn't go back inside. The house felt hollow now, broken. The door hung twisted on its hinges, the glass shattered across the floor. That thing had touched it, crawled through it, filled it with its stench. Whatever home my family once had, it wasn't safe anymore. Maria and I sat in the truck as the night stretched on, headlights cutting a weak circle into the dark. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The desert around us was too quiet, like the world was holding its breath. Finally, Maria whispered, "Your mother left more than just letters, didn't she?" I didn't answer right away. Her words struck something raw. When I looked at her, I saw the truth flicker in her eyes. She knew. Back inside, I found myself in the cellar again. I don't even remember deciding to go down there. My hands moved on their own, sweeping away the broken glass, tugging open the trapdoor, climbing into the cool dark. Maria followed, the glow of her lighter chasing away the shadows. The box was still there. I thought I'd pulled everything out, but when I shifted the papers aside, I noticed a false bottom. The wood lifted with a groan, revealing a bundle wrapped in faded cloth. My stomach tightened as I unwrapped it. Inside lay bones, small, too small. A child's femur, cracked at the end. Tiny ribs, brittle and gray. Maria covered her mouth, gagging. There was something else bundled with the bones, a piece of hide, leathered and stiff, smeared with symbols I didn't recognize. And tucked into the folds, a lock of black hair tied with sinew. The air in the cellar thickened. I could almost hear my mother's voice whispering from the walls. Maria hissed, "This is why it won't leave. Your mother, she didn't just fight it. She fed it, or tried to bind it. These are offerings." I shook my head violently. Number she wouldn't. But even as I said it, I remembered her eyes in those last months, hollow and frantic. The way she'd whispered to corners of the room when she thought I couldn't hear. The way she never let me play outside after dark. My mother hadn't beaten it. She'd bargained. And bargains with things like that never end clean. We burned the bones at dawn. The smoke rose bitter and black against the pale sky. Maria muttered prayers under her breath while I fed the flames, hands trembling as the crackling filled the air. The wind shifted, carrying the stench back toward us. For a moment, I swore I heard laughter in the smoke. We didn't linger. By midday, we packed what little we had and left the house behind. The elder's words echoed in my head. You can only protect yourself. Endure. But how long? I drove without knowing where I was going, the highway stretching endless and empty. Maria sat stiff beside me, chain-smoking, her eyes darting to the horizon like she expected something to appear at any moment. At sunset, the engine sputtered. The needle dipped below E. I cursed under my breath, guiding the truck onto the shoulder. The desert sprawled around us, red rock glowing under the dying light. Not a town in sight. Maria's hand tightened on her knife. We can't stay here. But night was already bleeding across the sky. We built a fire with what little brush we could gather. The flames licked weakly, barely pushing back the dark. I laid the elder's pouch in the dirt between us, like a barrier. Maria sat close, her face lit orange by the fire, but her eyes were far away. When I was little, she said, my father told me the skinwalkers were jealous of the living, that they wore our faces because they wanted what they lost. They'd do anything to feel human again. She looked at me then, tears glinting. What if that's why it's after you? What if it wants more than just your fear? The fire popped, sending sparks into the night. Before I could answer, we heard it. Footsteps, circling the fire. Not in the brush, not out of sight. Close, too close. We froze, eyes wide, as the footsteps scraped in the dirt, slow and deliberate. Then came the voice. Mine. Maria. It was perfect. My tone, my inflection, like I was speaking without moving my lips. She stared at me in horror, her hand clamping around the knife. I'm right here, I whispered, my own voice shaking. The mimic circled closer. Maria, it said again, softer. Please, I'm scared. Let me sit with you. The fire dimmed, shadows pressing in tight. I grabbed the pouch, fingers digging into the herbs. Don't listen, I said. It's trying to separate us. The laughter came next. My laughter. Ugly, broken, echoing through the night. Then the fire collapsed in a hiss of smoke. Darkness swallowed us whole. Something lunged. I barely saw it in the starlight, just a blur of pale limbs. I threw the pouch into the dirt, herbs scattering, smoke billowing in a sudden flare. The thing screamed, a sound halfway between a child's cry and an animal's wail. Its shape flickered in the smoke, faces blooming and collapsing across its skin. My mother, Maria's father, myself. Maria slashed at it, blade catching flesh. Dark blood sprayed across the dirt, hissing where it hit the embers. The skinwalker staggered back, howling. Then it dropped to all fours and bolted into the night, its laughter trailing behind. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. We didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every shadow looked like it might stretch into a hand. Every gust of wind carried whispers. As the first light of dawn crept over the desert, Maria finally spoke. Her voice was raw. It's not going to stop. I stared into the ash of the fire, throat tight. No, I said. It isn't. Chapter 8. Ash and Salt. The desert sun rose pale and unforgiving. By morning, the night felt like a fever dream, except the scratches across Maria's arm, the scorch marks in the dirt, and the lingering stink of rot made it clear it had been all too real. We walked for miles, the truck abandoned behind us. No fuel, no way to fix it. The road stretched endless under our boots, heat already pressing down though the day had barely begun. Every so often, I caught Maria looking over her shoulder. Each time, her face hardened like stone when she didn't see anything there. But I knew she felt it too. That weight, that pressure of being stalked. The skinwalker wasn't gone. It was waiting. By midday, we reached the old mission church, or what was left of it. Its adobe walls sagged, half collapsed, the bell tower a skeleton of cracked beams and rusted metal. Vultures circled lazily overhead. Maria stopped at the edge of the courtyard. Bad place. I looked at her, sweat burning my eyes. Bad how? This land remembers what was done to it. Blood, desecration, spirits that never left. Her words crawled under my skin. Still, it was shade, shelter, and maybe more. Inside, the church smelled of dust and bat droppings. The altar was crumbled, plaster saints missing their faces, their hands. A cross leaned crooked in the corner, the wood blackened with rot. Maria touched the wall, whispering under her breath. Sometimes the broken places still hold power, sometimes stronger. I wanted to believe her. We made a small camp in one of the corners, laying the elder's pouch near the doorway. I didn't know if it would be enough, but it was all we had. For a while, silence stretched between us. Then Maria pulled something from her bag, a bundle of salt tied in cloth. My grandmother made me carry this, she said softly. Said salt could slow it down, if nothing else. She sprinkled a line across the threshold, her movements careful, reverent. When she was done, she looked at me. Tell me about her. I frowned. Who? Your mother. What she was like before this thing came. For a long time, I couldn't answer. My memories of her felt fractured, pieces of light and laughter overshadowed by those last hollow years. Finally, I said, she used to sing. All the time. In the kitchen, hanging laundry, driving me to school. Songs I didn't even know the words to, but I can still hear her voice. She smiled more back then. My throat tightened. When the thing came, it took that from her. Like it was feeding on the joy first, leaving her hollow. Maria's gaze softened. It'll try to do the same to you. I didn't tell her I already felt it working. That night the dreams came. I was back in the house, the walls bleeding, the mirrors alive. My mother stood at the end of the hallway, arms open, face half her own, half the shifting mask of the creature. Daniel, she whispered, come home. Her voice twisted, doubling until it was my own voice echoing back at me. I woke with a shout, heart hammering, the church roof looming above me. Maria gripped my shoulder, knife in her other hand, eyes wild. Did you hear it? She hissed. At first I only heard my pulse, then soft, deliberate, knocking. On the walls, on the doors, on the ceiling. The salt at the threshold smoldered like something had pressed against it. It didn't break through that night, but it stayed close, pacing, breathing, scraping. We clung to the fire like it was the last light in the world. By morning, Maria looked worse than I felt. Her hands shook when she tried to relight the bundle of sage, the flame sputtering against the wind. We can't just wait here, she said finally. It'll wear us down, starve us out. That's what it does. It hunts until there's nothing left. Her words settled like ash in my chest. Then what do we do? I asked. She hesitated, then reached into her bag again. From the bottom, she pulled a small leather book, worn and cracked, its pages yellowed. My grandmother kept this, she said. Wrote down everything she knew about them. Rituals, warnings, ways to fight back. She flipped through with shaking hands, stopping at a page marked with a strip of hide. The ink was smudged, but I could still make out the words. Salt, fire, ash of the dead bound to it, its own blood turned against it. Maria looked up at me, eyes blazing despite the fear. "We can end this." The words thrilled and terrified me at once. "End it?" I said. "The elder said you can't kill it." Her jaw tightened. Maybe he was protecting us, or maybe he was too afraid to try. But if this is true, if its blood is the key, we already made it bleed. The memory of its scream echoed in my skull. For the first time, the idea of fighting back didn't feel impossible. For the first time, I felt something like hope. We gathered what we had: salt, sage, firewood. The scrap of cloth with dried blood still clinging where Maria's knife had struck it. As the sun dipped low again, we traced a circle inside the ruined church, lining it with salt and ash. The book lay open at the center, its pages trembling in the draft. Maria's voice was steady as she whispered the old words, though I could tell she didn't know all of them. I laid the pouch of herbs beside the fire. The air thickened, heavy, like the desert was holding its breath. Then the knocking started again. Harder this time, faster. The walls shook, the bell tower groaned. Dust rained from the rafters. Then silence, a silence so deep it pressed against my eardrums. Maria's grip tightened on my arm. "It's here!" The door burst inward, salt scattering, wood splintering like kindling. And it stepped inside. Chapter 9. The circle breaks. The door didn't just burst open, it exploded. Splinters rained across the church, whistling like arrows. Maria cried out, shielding her face, while I staggered back, salt crunching under my boots. It stepped inside. Not a blur this time, not just a shadow in the periphery. The skinwalker stood in the doorway, framed by the pale glow of the desert moon. Its body bent and stretched like it hadn't chosen what to be. Limbs too long, spine crooked, its skin crawling with shifting faces. My mother's eyes blinked at me from its shoulder. My own jaw jutted grotesquely from its chest, and beneath it all, its true face flickered. Something animal, something human, something older than both. It smiled, every face curving into the same hideous grin. Maria's knife trembled in her hand, but she held her ground. The circle we'd drawn pulsed faintly, a shimmer in the air. The creature stepped closer and stopped, one clawed foot hovering just above the line of ash and salt. A hiss escaped its throat. Maria's voice shook but didn't break. "It's working." The thing's many mouths opened. My voice came out first. "Maria." Then my mother's. "Daniel." Then a chorus. Dozens, hundreds, layered voices that weren't meant to be together. "Let us in." The fire sputtered, fighting to hold against the weight of its presence. I felt it pressing against my chest, my ribs creaking like they might split. My mother's face shifted across its skin again, lips moving. "Son," it whispered. Something broke inside me. My knees buckled. "Stop!" Maria grabbed my arm, jerking me upright. Her eyes burned with anger and fear. "Don't listen to it. It's not her. It's never her." But what if it was? What if some part of her was trapped inside, bound to the thing she'd bargained with? The thought nearly pulled me across the line. Maria thrust the bloody cloth, the scrap from our last fight, into the fire. Flames roared higher, licking the rafters. The smell of iron and rot filled the church, and the creature screamed, staggering back. Its faces melted, skin bubbling like wax, until its true form surged forward. A mass of bone and sinew, eyes glowing pale, mouth split too wide. It hit the barrier with a sound like thunder. The circle trembled, cracks splitting through the ash. Maria shouted words from the book, voice raw and frantic. I couldn't understand half of them, but the fire seemed to. It flared with every phrase, sparks leaping into the air. The creature writhed, limbs twisting, claws tearing at invisible walls. It howled, a sound that made my teeth ache. Then it turned its gaze on me, and everything went quiet. Suddenly, I wasn't in the church anymore. I was back home, the kitchen, morning light. My mother at the stove, humming one of her songs. She turned, smiling at me, flour dusting her cheek. "Daniel," she said warmly, "come sit, eat." The smell of pancakes filled the air. My chest ached. It was perfect. Too perfect. And then her smile twitched. Her face rippled, like something underneath the skin was pressing to get out. "Stay with me," she whispered, voice doubling, cracking. "Forever." I blinked and saw the truth. The wallpaper wasn't wallpaper. It was skin. The humming wasn't a song. It was a growl. The thing had pulled me inside its lie. In the real world, I heard Maria screaming my name. I fought to hold on to her voice, clawing my way back. The kitchen melted, walls sagging, floor turning to ash. My mother's face twisted, splitting down the middle to reveal the skinwalker's grin. I tore free. When I gasped awake, I was on my knees in the circle, sweat pouring down my face. Maria gripped my shoulders, shaking me. The creature was inside the church now, half its body forced through the barrier. Its claws dug into the floorboards, dragging itself forward inch by inch. Maria thrust the book at me. "Say it. Say the words." "I don't know them." Her eyes blazed. "Then make them yours. Speak it like you mean it." The fire was dying. The circle was breaking. It was now or nothing. I pressed my hand into the ash, blood from my cut palm smearing across the salt. The words rose in my throat, half from the book, half from someplace older, deeper. By blood spilled, by fire fed, by ash returned to earth, you are bound. The air shuddered. The church beams groaned like they might collapse. The creature shrieked, claws flailing, its skin peeled back in sheets, faces burning away in the light. My mother's voice screamed one last time, echoing through the rafters. "Daniel!" Tears blurred my vision. "You're not her." I shoved the last of the bloodied cloth into the fire. Flames erupted, white hot, consuming everything. The creature convulsed, its body collapsing in on itself, limbs folding, faces melting into black smoke. It thrashed against the circle, but the ash and salt burned like iron against its skin. Maria shouted over the roar, "Keep going!" I pressed harder, voice breaking. "By your blood, you are undone." The fire roared. The church shook. Then, with a scream that wasn't human, the skinwalker's body imploded into ash and shadow. The wind howled as the smoke was sucked into the fire, swallowed whole. Then silence. The circle smoldered, and the creature was gone. I collapsed onto the floor, chest heaving. Maria fell beside me, her knife clattering from her hand. For a long time we didn't move, didn't speak, just breathed, waiting for the shadows to shift again. But they didn't. The night held still. Finally, Maria whispered, "We did it." Her words trembled, as though she didn't believe them. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But deep in my chest, where the thing's voice had curled itself around my heart, I felt an echo. Not gone. Not yet. Chapter 10. The Hollow Dawn. The first light of dawn spilled across the desert like blood on sand. Maria and I sat outside the ruined church, shoulders leaning together, sweat crusted to our skin, The fire was only a pile of gray ash now. The smell of smoke lingered, bitter and sharp. For a long moment neither of us spoke. We didn't want to. Words felt empty after the night we'd survived. Eventually, Maria broke the silence, voice low. "Do you think it's really gone?" I shook my head slowly, staring at the horizon. The desert stretched endless, empty, but I knew better. Nothing like that disappears. "I don't know," I said, "but it's weakened, injured. It won't forget tonight." She swallowed, looking at the remnants of the circle. Ash, salt, and blood smeared across the floorboards. "Then we keep moving. We can't stay. Not here, not anywhere it might track us." I nodded. My body ached, muscles trembling, heart still pounding from the ritual. Yet beneath the exhaustion, a strange calm settled. For the first time in weeks, I felt alive. We drove away in silence, leaving the church behind. The desert around us was quiet, almost peaceful, as if it hadn't noticed the chaos that had unfolded. But every shadow, every distant ridge, felt like it could conceal something watching. Maria reached over, gripping my hand. "We have to be ready. If it comes back, we fight again. We survive again." I squeezed her hand in return. The warmth reminded me I wasn't alone, that even in the face of something inhuman, we had each other. Later, we stopped near a small spring. The water glinted in the sun, clear and still. I washed the ash from my hands, letting the cool water carry some of the terror away. Maria knelt beside me, drinking, then looked at the horizon. "Your mother," she said quietly. "She did what she could. She protected you as best she could. But some debts, they last longer than a lifetime." I thought about the letters, the box, the bones hidden beneath the floorboards, about the lullabies she'd sung, the warnings she'd whispered. My mother had been trapped in the same nightmare, bargaining with something far older than her. And now somehow that legacy had landed on me. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the thought. Survival was what mattered. The past could stay buried in ashes. We drove on for hours until the sun dipped behind distant mesas and the first stars began to appear. That's when I saw it. A shape on a ridge in the distance, too small for the skinwalker's massive form, yet unmistakable. Eyes glinting like wet stones, watching, waiting. Maria saw it too. Her hand found mine again, tighter this time. "It's still out there," she whispered. I swallowed hard. "Yeah," I said. "But we survived. We'll survive again." For a moment, that was enough. We drove into the night, tires crunching over the dirt road, the wind carrying only the faintest trace of laughter, distant and mocking. Somewhere behind us, I knew the creature lurked, patient, enduring, waiting for the next mistake. But for now, we were alive, and sometimes that's enough. In the days that followed, we kept moving. No towns, no houses, only the desert, the highways, and the knowledge that each step we took might be watched. The book Maria carried became our guide. Every ritual, every salt line, every whisper of fire or ash offered a small shield against the thing's power. And yet, I knew it could return at any time. Its hunger, its jealousy, its twisted mimicry, it could not be reasoned with. But as long as we remembered the rules, as long as we held on to each other, we had a chance. And sometimes at night, when the wind rustled the dry brush just right, I swore I could hear a faint whistle, the lullaby my mother used to sing. I'd freeze, heart thudding, waiting for the knock that never came. And then I'd remember. It's only trying to get us to open the door. I didn't open it. Not now. Not ever. We drove on into the dark, into the hollow dawn, carrying the knowledge that the world is bigger than fear, bigger than loss, and far older than any of us. And somewhere out there, the Skinwalker waits. But for tonight, at least, we are still alive.